Hey, I'm Haley. I'm an alcoholic. I'm excited to be able to speak here tonight because I know most of you because this is my home group. And it's kind of funny just thinking back. I think this might have actually been the first AA meeting I ever came to as primary purpose. And fast forward, and now it's my home group, and I'm actually sober, which I didn't think would happen. And then prior to that, I'm from this area, so I actually went to this church for youth group for about a year before I discovered that I really liked drinking more than I liked going to youth group. So it's kind of funny, the irony behind that. I'm like, God definitely has a sense of humor. But yeah, my sobriety date is August 11th, 2019, and like I said, this is my home group, and I have the privilege to have service positions here, and I have a sponsor. I have a sponsored woman. I'm not currently sponsoring anyone, but I'm open to it, and I think that's all the housekeeping stuff, but I'm just here to tell you guys what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. So, I was born, and I'm from this area, was raised here, an only child, and both sides of my family are just very heavily alcoholic. My dad was an alcoholic, like 3 out of 4 grandparents, a lot of aunts and uncles and all of that. So I just kind of grew up thinking that was normal, and especially on my dad's side, a lot of them are very functional. My grandfather created his own business from the ground up and was very successful for a really long time. And my dad worked as a business owner and all of that, and so did most of his brothers. But, I mean, they were all active alcoholics. So I just kind of saw that as, you know, you can still drink, have fun, be an alcoholic, but you still pay your mortgage and you have a job and you're successful. But what I didn't see at that time is, you know, all the divorces that are a result of that, the internal suffering and shame and just guilt and fear and things like that. And then fast forward, I don't know, 10 or 20 years, and everyone's failing at their business because they're active addicts, you know. So, but that's just kind of the message I got growing up. And my dad was always the life of the party. He loved cracking jokes and, you know, just being that jovial guy that kind of got everyone in a good mood. And I know that, you know, that's part of the reason. That's what alcohol did for him. And my mom was never a big drinker, but both of her parents were, so she kind of stepped into that enabling role, and she did that for me as well as I got older. But my parents divorced when I was pretty young. They probably separated like when I was around 3, and then by 5 they were for sure split. And definitely part of that is, of course, a result of my dad's alcoholism and just their dynamic too, and it's a whole family illness. It's not just his fault. So I kind of grew up, I was a very anxious child. I remember asking, like, what happens if the house catches on fire? Or the door's locked? What happens if we get robbed? You know, all that stuff. I was really young, too. It's just not what I should have been worrying about. And I definitely grew up with that feeling. A lot of people share behind the podium that, you know, everyone else knows how to live life and they have the handbook of how to live life, but I just don't really know what I'm doing. And I'm just egotistical, always feel left out. To the point of, I remember like always riding bikes with my mom and friends or just friends, and if I got like a little bit behind people, I would just be like, wait for me. So, you know, always feeling really left out. And that just continued as I got older, and my mom was always there, but she was busy a lot of the time, and I was an only child. I just kind of grew up as a young adult in a way, and more of her confidant, and just like a little, you know, little adult that could handle things, and a lot of perfectionism too, as well. And yeah, so that carries me through. And then I always had friends, and I had a pretty normal childhood other than, having a severely alcoholic family. And played sports and stuff like that. So there were some things, that were good. And I definitely don't think that I'm an alcoholic because of my family, but who knows if there's a genetic component or not. But that's just my story. And I remember, so I get to maybe middle school, probably 13 or 14 at this point, and I was talking to my friends, and we're like, we're never gonna drink or do drugs ever. Let's make a pact, and we did like pinky promises or something. And then maybe 5 months later, we were at a sleepover and decided to raid my friend's uncle's liquor cabinet because they were really big drinkers. So we go and we get some bottles of bourbon and probably vodka or whatever, and replace, what we drank with water and things like that. And that was my first drink, shots of bourbon. And I remember being so excited to try alcohol. I don't know why I pivoted so quickly in a 5-month period of time, but they were all about to go to sleep before we, got or stole liquor. I was like, no, we gotta go, come on, we gotta try it. We've been saying we want to try it for a while, just because I was that excited to, I don't know, I guess, see what it would do for me. And it wasn't anything crazy. I do remember just feeling kind of peaceful and less anxious, even though I had no idea I had so much fear and anxiety at that point in my life. And nothing crazy happened. It was just probably 4 or 5 of us drinking together, and they probably actually got more drunk than I did at that point. But from that point on, all through high school, I kind of made it my priority to, at first it was just on the weekends, I would either have my mom buy me alcohol on the weekends, or we would steal alcohol from someone else's parent and just drink in someone's room. But I kind of made it a priority because to me it was cool and fun, and that's just what I wanted to do. And really early on, it became evident that I didn't drink like my friends did. And I was always the one taking the most shots or getting the most drunk and falling over, getting sick. And I just didn't have that off switch even, the first year I was drinking. And I loved it. I thought it was so fun. I blacked out really early on in drinking, or my drinking career. And I would say so I get to high school, and that's kind of how my drinking was in the beginning, like the first year of high school. And at that point, I'm playing soccer. I'm doing youth group because my friends did youth group. I didn't grow up religious or anything or going to church. They just kind of pulled me in because that's what they grew up with. So I was going to church and involved. I did some volunteer work through the school. So I had a really well-rounded, school and extracurricular life. And I always did pretty well in school, so my grades were good. And then by sophomore year of high school, the drinking starts happening, not just on the weekends, but, maybe after school, I'll find a way to get it. We would play Hey Mister a lot and go to the gas station and just see if someone would want to buy us some alcohol, or like a 40 or a Four Loko or something like that. And we could, you could always find someone to get you alcohol. So it just keeps progressing. I would say about 15 or 16 is when I started also realizing that if I was friends with older people, then I would get invited to older people's parties, and they would have ways to have, a better supply of alcohol. And like I said, my mom was always, she did what she could. She did a lot for me, but she was definitely a really big enabler. She didn't think it was a problem to have alcohol at all. And in her mind, it's normal drinking to excess, and she'd rather have us drinking at her house or, where she can supervise us, was her reasoning anyways. if I had no other way to get it, I would just drink alone and have some wine after school and go through a bottle or two because it's self-care. And I just had a really hard day at soccer practice or something. It really didn't take long for me to see kind of the alcoholic nature in myself. And I quit soccer. I think I ran track too. I quit that. I quit, like I said, going to youth group. I also was a young life leader at that point, and I quit that. And I remember the day I quit, my friends were waiting for me in the car, and we rolled a blunt, and I'm like, peace out, just like, I'm too cool for you guys. Just so stupid. Hold on. And then before I know it, I have my afternoons free, and I can just drink some Everclear with my friends that drink like me and want to drink after school on a weekday. And my first boyfriend, I was probably, around this age, 15 or 16. This also shows just how, quickly I kind of slipped into, I guess, just that selfishness and victimhood of everything that goes wrong in my life is someone else's fault and definitely not my own. So I get drunk one night, as per usual, and I'm texting my boyfriend, and I guess over the course of that night, I decided to break up with him, but I don't remember that when I wake up. And I just try and play it off like I did nothing, but he's not having that at all. And I even was like, I'm so sorry, I was just drunk, and I had no idea what happened. And he was like, of course you were drunk. And it's just kind of really depressing that at that age, that's the kind of response I was getting. And I was just so devastated. I thought he was just being really rude. And of course I did nothing wrong. And so, in a dramatic teenage fashion, when that happened, I went to my friend's house, and I know she had some pills, and I'm like, I need them, do you still have those pills? Because that's the only way I can absolutely ever process this, breakup that is really nothing in my life. So even from that age, I need something to take the edge off and serve as a crutch. But all that said, in high school, I didn't really have any real consequences of my drinking. I graduated. I was still able to keep my grades up, even though I had started some not so good habits, like drinking alone. Senior year, I would spike my coffee before school sometimes, but I always had that double life going where I could kind of fly under the radar. I'm smart, I get good grades, it's fine. So I graduated high school, and I got into a good school, and I didn't really think much about college at that point. I just thought, I'd pick somewhere, it would be fine, and I would figure it out from there. It just was not on my priority list, really. So I go, and I ended up not liking that school. Shocker. I put absolutely no thought into where I was going to go. So then that kind of turns into more self-pity, and I drink alone more. My blackouts are continuing to increase. The few times I do go out, I went out with some people I knew from high school that actually were at that same school too. And I guess I just made a fool of myself, and they never invited me out to drink with them again. I don't know what happened, but I definitely was acting like an idiot. At this point, I decided that I need to transfer schools, and the place is my problem, and I'm just unhappy because where I'm at, and that kind of became a recurring theme in my life for up until me getting sober. And I come back to Pinehurst for a semester to figure out, what I'm going to do about school. And I just am so self-pitying, and of course I'm going to drink all the time because I'm in Pinehurst when everyone else is out doing, whatever they're doing at school. So this is kind of the year I started having consequences. I got my first DUI, my only DUI somehow, when I was 19, and I was driving home in a blackout, and barely, I was blacked out. The only thing I really remember is getting the handcuffs put on me, and I still, I really thought it was because I drove the wrong way home. And if I drove the right way home that I normally drive, then I clearly would not have been arrested. And it just totally went over my head that, maybe people shouldn't drive in a blackout. And it's really dangerous and selfish. And but I'd also started drinking and driving at a young age, too. When I would meet my dad for dinner and things, I would kind of, bother him until he would buy me a rum and Coke, and then drink a few of those, drive home. So, it was just something I didn't see an issue with, clearly. And so I get the DUI, and my mom does a really good job of making sure I don't have any consequences from that. She pays for everything, drives me around all the time. Just really feeds into that victim mentality that it's the police officer's fault and not mine, and I did nothing wrong. So that didn't really help. And I got my license taken away for 2 years. And then it was just a really bad year for me overall. I was also dating a guy that turns out he had a really bad drug addiction, which I didn't really see a problem with at the time. And then a few weeks after I got my DUI, I'd had a fake ID for a while at this point. And I went with a few friends down to Charleston because we we would take trips to basically just go on benders. And we decided to drive down to Charleston and really just bar hop for the whole weekend. And down there, I ended up getting more drinking tickets on top of the DUI I already had. And, I was the type of drinker that was either running away from my friends, blacking out, falling over everywhere. I was just always severely drunk and unmanageable. And I'm falling, face planting in the middle of the street, and then I get more drinking tickets, and then I end up going to this froyo store, I think probably on King Street, the main street there, and I'm just sobbing because I feel like my life's over. But now I find it hilarious because I'm oh, that's so it's so funny how I bring it, we bring it all on ourselves and then act surprised that life isn't going the way you want it to go. So I'm crying to my friend, and I'm I just got a DUI and I have more drinking tickets and my boyfriend's going to rehab, and just that was probably some sort of bottom. But I'm still, I'm not connecting that all, maybe I should just try to not drink that much. Or maybe I can't drink like other people. And yeah, so nothing really changed. I ended up transferring and continuing to drink the way that I always drank. And I had to do 24 hours of community service. I got off pretty easily, other than getting my license taken away for a while. And this is when I kind of decided that I needed to do more pills, because clearly, I dated someone that they're such addictive thinking. I'm they must be good enough to go to rehab for, so I must try them. And and that's clearly the only way that I can get through my community service, because it's so super unfair that I have to vacuum the student union for 30 hours or whatever. So I kind of get into that, and mixing things I shouldn't mix, but again, I was able to just kind of live that double life. I kept my grades up enough. I didn't get into any real trouble when I was in college. My friends did think it was really weird sometimes the ones that it's college, we all kind of drank alcoholically, but there was like a clear line between me and some of my friends that definitely had problems, and then the ones that didn't, and they were always kind of confused at why I didn't remember anything, or some of the actions that I would take while I was drinking. But, I still didn't see a problem with it. But I will say, too, that on the inside, like, things just kept getting worse. The anxiety kept getting worse. I was never happy with anything. I didn't understand why other people seemed like they were enjoying life so much, and I just couldn't really relate to that, or why they seemed so carefree. And I felt like I could only get that feeling when I drank or when I had some other sort of substance. So I get to the point where I'm graduating, and I have no idea what I'm going to do. So I seem to be like pretty reasonable at school, so I decide to just continue on with school. But I've been trying to get out of the South for so long because I really thought, it was just the place. And I just had to go somewhere else and then my life would be perfect. So I decided to move to California. And yeah, I was in a grad program there. And of course, nothing changed. I mean, I was still just my fearful self, and it just kept getting worse. And I kept, at this point, like, I really felt like I couldn't make it a day without having something in my system to kind of, ease the pain. Like, I don't know what was so painful, but, yeah, at that point, I actually went to the school counselor just because I was miserable. And I don't remember what I said to her, but she gave me, I don't know if it was an AA pamphlet or schedule or some sort of like university program, but she was like, maybe you should check this out, like a support group for people that don't want to drink anymore and use. And I left that, and I was like, I have to find a new therapist. I can't go back and see her because I'm not doing that. So I went to another therapist in LA, and he was great because he really didn't know anything about addiction. So I go in and I tell him, because I was getting a little fearful of my drinking at this point. I'd been fortunate enough to travel a lot, and I had this really bad habit of blacking out and then just leaving, and that's not the best thing to do alone in a foreign country. And it's not that great if your friend does that to you. So, like, things like that would happen. There was one Halloween where, I run away and I wake up on a cot and a nurse is standing over me, like, demanding to know someone's cell phone number so they can contact them because they can't leave. And I have no idea how this happened or, like, who found me. And I can't even remember my own phone number. And then I find, just terrible things like that. And then getting taken to the hospital. And, of course, my mom is, again, totally fine with all of this and just kind of feeds into the, like, I'll bail you out, or if you have any issue, I'll pay for it. So just pattern after pattern of that, I was just wanting to drink for fun, like it used to be fun. And so that's kind of what I brought to that therapist. Not really wanting to be sober, but I wanted the fun back, and I didn't want it to be stressful anymore. And he told me, oh, you're fine, you're not an alcoholic, which is really what I wanted to hear, I think, from a professional. So, yeah, I think that was really I had no consequences either. I was able to somehow graduate from that school, even though I was going to class drunk or high and stuff like that. I was able to pull it together enough and get a degree. And then I decided, because California didn't work out for me, I need to move to Boston. So I moved to Boston. And that's definitely going to be the answer. And I'm just not chill enough to live in LA, I guess. So I moved to Boston, and I got a pretty good job, and I thought that was gonna be the answer to all my problems, and quickly realized that I'm the same person that I was in LA, but I can't connect that to why, you know, my life isn't looking the way I think it should look. And at this point, I was definitely daily drinking. I would drink on my lunch breaks sometimes, but I always had an excuse of like, well, I'm not really, really drunk. I'm just tipsy at work. Or I don't do it every day. Some days I do wait until 5. So it's really not that big of a deal, and I'm still employed. I can still pay my rent, so I'm fine. Still keeping up appearances really well, but then beneath that, you know, like I can barely, like all I can afford is my rent, and then I rely on, you know, my parents because I feel so entitled that they should pay for some of my expenses and things like that. And I'm isolated. I drink alone a lot. Yeah, and then I'm afraid to go out to bars with my colleagues because who knows what I'm going to do. And I can't go to work the next day knowing or like not knowing if I blacked out or what I did in a blackout. So it was just still causing more problems. And then the way I was when I was drinking, I started getting angrier, and I remember going to one of my really close friends' weddings. I flew to Georgia for it, and I was so excited to see him get married and all of that. And then I get there, and the day of the wedding, like, I'm so irritable, and I'm so just annoyed with everyone around me and, like, shaky, and it's, like, 10:30, and I'm like, you guys need to pull over and get wine, because at this point, I was like, I won't drink liquor all the time, because it's just, like, the whiskey, I'll just drink wine instead. I did that whole managing game, and I just vividly remember pouring some of the wine and then instantly feeling better because I have, you know, that thing that makes life bearable. And then that wedding was also not that great because I, again, blacked out like I usually do. And for whatever reason, I decided to punch one of my really close friends in the face, and I was just really mean to her, and I lost my keys, and then I woke up the next day in North Carolina, not knowing how I got there from Georgia. But apparently I just made this big scene and, like, demanded to be driven home so I could see my mom's dog, which is so silly, but there I was. So yeah, just things like that were occurring more than, of course, I wanted them to. So then I decide that it's just America and I need to leave America. So yeah. So I had this grand plan to move to Thailand, and I realized that I could do my job remotely, and I broke the lease with my friend, which, I mean, I'm just so selfish and entitled to thinking everything needed to be my way, and basically ended our friendship over a lease and decided to never talk to her again, and that's just the kind of friend I was. So I moved to Thailand. And I don't think you guys are going to be really shocked when I tell you that nothing was different. I didn't plan it very well. I didn't save up a lot of money. I still had student loans to pay back. So it takes me like 4 or 5 months to realize that that's not financially sound. And I just got to a point where I was perfectly fine asking my parents for money, but this time it was different. I was kind of like feeling shameful of it, and my dad was really sick at that point. So I decided after like 4 or 5 months in Thailand and trying to find the solution there and going to Buddhist temples and all of that, that I should just come home. And I kind of see that as God doing for me what I can't do for myself, because 2 weeks later, my dad passed away. And I probably would have said before that I was totally fine, you know, not being there if that happened. But I'm really thankful that I was able to, you know, come back and just see him one last time before he died. And that just kind of, you know, he was sick for a while, and as I said, he was an alcoholic, which obviously had a lot to contribute to his death. And that just, you know, gives me more fuel, and now I think that, of course, no one's going to tell me that I have to modify my drinking or anything because I'm grieving, and you just don't tell people that, especially in my family. That's just normal. So I just kind of keep doing what I'm doing, and at this point I'm working remotely, so I can work and drink the whole day. And for a while, I had been waking up from blackouts and Googling, like, am I an alcoholic? Because I knew a lot of people in my family were. And I am sure the test always said yes. And I was just like, oh, well, that sucks. So, you know, like, I knew I didn't drink normally and what I was doing wasn't normal. But, like, truly, what reason did I have to change? So I come back and just blacked out one night, and I woke up from the blackout and nothing happened. I think I shared this, and Monday it was just a standard blackout. You know, I just lost some shoes. I don't remember how I got home. Like, nothing crazy happened. I didn't get arrested. It was fine. So, again, like, in hindsight, I see this as God doing for me what I can't do for myself, which is offer me a moment of clarity. And I don't know what was different about that time. But I woke up and I was just like, maybe I should see someone again. Maybe I should ask for help, because I don't know what I'm doing. And this obviously isn't working for me. I don't know what will, but maybe I can at least talk to someone that actually knows something about addiction. And I even still think about that, and I just don't see a logical reason that my brain just doesn't think that way. I don't think that, like, I'm having no consequences other than, you know, I'm mentally and emotionally beaten down to quit drinking. So I ended up taking that, like, little window of time I feel like I had to actually reach out and get help. And I called an addiction counselor in the area, and just asked to meet with her. And I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting her to be like, maybe you should go to treatment or try AA, which both seemed really extreme to me. And, you know, surely I'm not that bad, like, really. But I don't know, I guess I just decided to try AA, and I came to a meeting, and this was the last place I ever thought that there would be a solution. Like, I thought meetings, I absolutely hated them. In the beginning, I wanted to drink more during the meetings, because everyone was talking about alcohol, and I would reward myself for going to meetings by drinking, and just not getting it, and not really understanding why. I guess I really was just desperate enough to kind of, like, dabble in sobriety. I wasn't really committed at that point yet. And again, like, I'm back in Pinehurst. What else do you do in Pinehurst other than drink and golf? And I don't golf. And it's, you know, I've spent the past, like, 10 years of my life thinking that the place is the problem. And now I'm in the place that is the original problem. And clearly I can't be sober here. So I really thought that, okay, if I'm going to try this thing, I'm going to have to go to rehab in, like, Washington State or something, like Texas. But my mom obviously didn't think I had a problem with alcohol. She was just still in a lot of denial. So I'm like, okay, well, I can't really pay for treatment, or, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I just keep going to meetings and keep seeing this counselor who kind of gave me some of her experience and hope that, like, that it can be possible without having to, like, go away for 3 months or whatever. So I got a sponsor really quickly. I remember actually sitting down with a home group member here. I think she moved away, but she basically told me, you are not leaving this meeting unless you have a sponsor. And I was a little afraid of her, so I was like, I guess I have to do it and just ask someone to be my sponsor. So I did that, and I still was just so one in and one out, like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And my sponsor at the time kept saying, if you don't put both feet in, you're going to drink again. And that's exactly what happened. I just wasn't really buying into what you guys were telling me to do. And I didn't think that the steps were actually going to work. And I believed in a higher power, but I didn't think that a higher power had anything to do with my alcoholism and me getting sober. So, I was just going to meetings and things like that. And I ended up, I'd probably been sober for maybe just a few months, like not in recovery really. So I ended up drinking again. And for me it was important because that was kind of the time when I really surrendered. And I really kind of was so fed up that I decided I would do whatever you guys told me to do. And if it didn't work, there would still be, drinking and drugs on the other end of that. But I would just give it a shot. So I went through the steps, and at this point, so, I'm back in Pinehurst. None of my friends are here that I grew up with. Now I don't have a job because the job that I had ended. It was seasonal, and I wasn't there in person. So basically, long story short, I didn't have a job. I had no life. I was super bored. And so I just started saying yes to anything that was AA or recovery related. And my sponsor was really good about beating home volunteer work. And I truly, truly did not understand why, if I had 3 or 4 months sober, I should be going to detox and telling people about AA. But in the spirit of just saying yes to AA, I would do that. And I went to meetings every day and just stopped trying to figure out, like, how things were going to work, and just put trust in the fact that they might work and the steps might actually help me with my problem. And I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, so I would do a lot of volunteer work, and then the promise, I get through my 4th and the 5th, and then I was miserable for so long in early sobriety. But I also learned that doesn't mean I have to drink again. I can be miserable and still do everything I'm supposed to do. And I was dealing with my dad's estate and all of that. But then probably when I got around to my amends is when I started kind of seeing the promises work in my life. I felt a little bit more at peace. I was more excited to come to meetings. I actually wanted to go to detox and talk with people, and just be a part of. And I started to feel a part of the group. And I really put off making this my home group for so long, just for that reason. Like, I didn't want to be a part of a group officially. But I just started to feel different. And like it says, having a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. And I started to realize that I'm happier sober. And I don't want to drink anymore. That obsession lifts. And I think for me, too, I fought so hard with step 3 for a while, turning my will over to God as I understood him. And like I said, I believed in God, but what does that look like? How am I going to turn my life over to some mythical being? But I just kept praying and seeking and showing up here. And slowly but surely, I start to kind of sense God in my life. And then one day I realized that God is probably the only reason that I'm in AA right now and sober. Because me alone, like I said, I just don't think like that. I don't think after one blackout to maybe I should reach out for help. And today, you know, I would be lying if I said I don't still have anxiety pop up and fear, but I have the tools to, I guess, live with that, and I have people to call, and I have the principles to live by. And just not feel so uncomfortable living that the only way I can get through it is by drinking or using something else. And so things finally started to change in my life, and someone in AA actually recommended me for a job here, because I finally came around to like, okay, Pinehurst is not so bad. But how am I going to get a job where, you know, like, how am I going to live a life that would be suitable for me to have, like, a, you know, a lasting life in recovery? So then, as it happens, someone in AA recommends me for a job, probably one of the only jobs that I would like to do, or, like, one of 3 maybe in this area. It's so funny she told me that, and I'm like, oh, I'm not staying here. Like, I'll apply, but, you know, I will probably move to Raleigh or something like that. And I ended up getting that job, which, again, is God working in my life and working through you guys. And I started right when COVID hit, which was really fun. And, yeah, I was able, another gift of sobriety is just, if I wasn't sober, I have no idea who would have dealt with my dad's estate and things like that, because it wouldn't have been me, so I don't really know, and I'm the only child, so that would have been interesting for sure, too, but to see what that would have been like, but I mean, even though it wasn't fun, I was able to handle the things I needed to handle, and I didn't have to drink over it, and yeah, and today I just hope to continue to do the deal and hopefully continue to do service work and bring the message to other people and live it one day at a time. I think that's all I got.
Thank you.